Yeah, you guys like that shit, don't you? I see you down there smiling. Hell yeah. All right. Hey, so from rigged borders to rigged justice, from woke warfighters to forgotten patriots. Today on the Tills4Thrills podcast, we expose the twisted double standard plaguing this country. Okay. Before we do get into it, quick shout out to W Energy. No crash, no BS. Keeps you locked in, keeps us locked in for every episode. Whether you're gaming, grinding, or just trying to stay sharp in this upside-down world, W delivers clean focus without the junk. Go to w.gg, use promo code Tills4Thrills at checkout, and get 10% off on us. That's DUBBY.gg. Stay sharp, stay bold. Getting into it, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our beautiful co-host, Nick Straub, everyone.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Nick coming back at you with another episode on the podcast. So just like we always go over in past episodes, you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, you can always email us at the Tills4Thrills Podcast at gmail.com. If you guys are interested in being a guest, if you guys have topic requests that you want to submit and see if it's a good fit and see if we can talk about it, you guys can always go ahead and email us. We will respond. It might take a second, but we will get back to you. We promise. If you guys are interested in seeing some behind the scenes content, you guys can always become a member at patreon.com/Tills4Thrills podcast. Membership is free. You'll have access to the Discord server. And if you want to go ahead and support further, you will always have options to do that. You guys can always follow us on all of our social medias. In fact, we encourage it. Holla at your boys, right? We got the Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, the X. Go ahead and follow us. If you guys are a veteran in need and you guys need somebody to talk to and you guys just, things aren't going well and you just have nowhere to turn, go ahead and call the Veterans Crisis Line, dial 988 and press 1. Other than that, I think we'll go on ahead and start introducing one of our guests. He's been on the podcast previously.
Pretty consistently, I might add.
Yeah, pretty consistently as well. And it's also, part of the reason why we bring him on is it's also National Nursing Week. So without further ado, I think we'll go ahead and introduce our guest, Gunner.
Hey guys, good to be here. So some of y'all remember me. I'm Gunner Christensen. I'm an active duty combat medic serving at Fort Hood right now. So it's really good to be here, guys.
Yeah, no, welcome back. Welcome back, man. So we have a lot to discuss today, kind of quite a lot to unpack, really. We're going to be discussing illegal immigration and what's going on in the United States with that right now. We're also going to be discussing the January 6th trial and what's happening there a little bit. And then we're also going to be talking about last Tuesday, the Supreme Court just approved the Trump administration's ban on transgenders in the military. And I think that's kind of a pretty interesting topic to start with because as I understand it, Doc, you ain't got much time.
Yeah.
So oh, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, from a military aspect, we look at the main thing, and I remember you guys know it, deployability, the ability to have boots on ground anywhere that the United States military needs us within a certain amount of time, right? And it's become very apparent that due to this and some of the constraints that people have while they're going through some of these things, it's just not able to happen.
Yeah, no, I see that. Being active duty during the times that it was becoming more, increasingly more allowed to be open about being transgender in the military, it was causing more of a negative effect around us as a whole, as a unit. Not because there's, not because I had any issues with it. You know, if you want to be transgender, you can be transgender. That's entirely your prerogative. That's what makes this country so great, is you get that freedom to choose, you know. On the other hand, excuse me, on the other hand, it became a problem because we then had to start treating people a lot differently. You know, it went from, hey, jackass, do this, to, oh, I'm sorry, can I, you know, what can I do to help you? How can I make you feel more comfortable?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It started really limiting how we can effectively do our jobs. Not only that, but I seen, you know, I have to follow a specific standard for PT. And then I got to turn around and look at this transgender woman who doesn't have to adhere to the male standard, and now does a female standard, which is significantly lower, by the way.
Yeah, way lower.
Way lower.
Yeah. So, oh, absolutely.
So as I understand it, Gunnar, you brought up an article that you were reading prior to this.
Yeah.
So you want to go ahead and share that with us, buddy?
So I remember reading this back in February, is when this was first out, and it's the Department of Defense's gender dysmorphia incompatible with military service members must serve in accordance with sex. That was the article. And the DoD put out a statement, and it says, it is the policy of the United States government to establish high standards for service member readiness, lethality, cohesion, honesty, humility, uniformity, and integrity. Okay, this policy is inconsistent with the medical, surgical, and mental health constraints on individuals with gender dysmorphia, or who have a current diagnosis or history of, or exhibit symptoms consistent with gender dysmorphia. So basically, the DoD kind of came out and said, hey, the current standards that we are going through are just not compatible with where we want the military to be. You know, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier with the deployability, lethality, is when you have a soldier sitting next to you and your only job is to make sure that, one, they keep you safe and you keep them safe, right? That's all we need to do. But there are certain steps in the process that we all take as members of the armed service to getting there. That's your basic training. That's your PT, your physical standard, you know. That's making sure everybody is mentally squared away to the best that they can be. Right? And it just goes to show is like, when you sit there and start treating people different, like you just talked about, Julian, you see very quickly that good order and discipline kind of breaks down. Because if I'm yelling at one kid, you know, if I'm yelling at one PFC next to me is like, I need you to do this for this casualty. And then I look at you and maybe, you know, you're going through the transition process. You've already done it. And I'm like, I need you to fucking do this. But I call you the wrong pronouns or whatever. You know, are you mentally able to do what I need you to do? Are you physically able, with all that you're putting your body through, to do what I need you to do? You know what I mean? Or am I going to be ass out with a patient?
Well, it's almost like a huge brain dump, you know, because now you're taking everything that you've learned as a whole, right? Because as a military member, you know, you have to learn so many different things. People would argue, you know, like, oh man, you know, they're in the military, they should have just went to college or whatever. When in fact, you're pretty much going through some type of higher education when you join the military, because you have to learn so many different things for your job. Mm-hmm. One of those things not being how to call somebody else a certain pronoun, you know? And it's crazy. It's crazy to think that whenever you're in an emergency situation and somebody's going to freak out because you didn't call ma'am a ma'am or sir or whatever it may be, you know, it's like, dude, that's not important right now. This guy's missing a fucking leg, or that's not important right now. Like, we got a deadline to meet, you know, like, let's get the fuck out of here. And too many people get hung up on the bullshit, man.
Yeah. Well, and I think another like issue too that I kind of wanted to mention and briefly touch on real quick is that, you know, it, at least to me, you know, and I'm not sure that you guys share the same sentiment, but, you know, which I hope that you would, but I feel like it just kind of makes us look weak as a fighting force. You know, other countries are going to see that and they go, well, we don't allow that shit. And they're over there allowing that shit. Man, they must be like desperate, or they must be this, or they must be that. Like, I think it makes us look weak as a fighting force.
Sure. Yeah, no, 100%. And it kind of goes back to, so I had an NCO who was like mad about the whole couldn't, you know, you couldn't grow out your facial hair or anything like that in the United States military.
Yeah.
Because we had a warfighting exercise in Fort Cavazos, previously named Fort Hood, where a bunch of international militaries came to do a joint training exercise on base, and they all looked like men. You know, even the women, they were women. We all look like children compared to them. And I mean, it doesn't help that most of the time they, you know, when they join the military, they're, you know, you get 18 right out of high school.
Sure.
But the fact that they look more intimidating than us, even though we're the superior fighting force, is still ridiculous. Just ridiculous.
I think it more so goes back to tying in what you said earlier, is like, we have soldiers who in their career have never done anything. You know what I mean? And it's not because they joined a branch of service that doesn't deploy. It's they joined the Army, and then especially with this topic is like they started transitioning because they were allowed to as soon as they got to their unit. Right?
Well, it's not just that. They joined solely to transition. Like,
Yeah.
there's people that went on the news and did interviews, and they're like, oh, yeah, all I did was join because I wanted to transition and I wanted the government to pay for it.
Yeah. And then you look at like us who we get these people, you know, you get a unit that just came back from something, right? And all of a sudden you've got 2 or 3 soldiers who, you know, in the back of your mind, you're not going to be able to touch for 2 to 3 years. You're not going to get anything out of these guys. Because their stance is, I joined to get this sex change operation. I'm doing one fucking contract and I'm getting out. You're useless to me. Even the people who are just there for one contract, who are not doing that, they're able to deploy. I know they're going to go to NTC with me or JRTC. I know they're going to get on that plane over to whatever country that we're doing 8 to 11 months in. And when we get back, they're just going to process out. But they were a member of this team in every sense. You know what I mean? And then you get these people who are like, oh, I can't go. I can't deploy because my MedPro says I can't. Why does your MedPro say you can't? Oh, well, I'm on hormone blockers. I have an operation coming up. I don't give a fuck about that. I'm sorry. I really don't. We have 30 people in a platoon. I need you in a spot because that's what we need. But you're not going, so now I have to have other people.
It goes back to the military's role is to win wars, not validate identity politics.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, the Army shouldn't have to worry about whether or not you're having a sex change operation. The Army needs to worry about, are you in the right place at the right time, in the right uniform, doing the right thing, and doing what you're fucking told. That's what it is. You know, if we have to go over here and we have a job to do, and you're over here talking about, you know, hormone blockers and all that, man, we don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? We got other shit that has to be focused on. We shouldn't be worrying about whether or not, you know, your feelings are okay, and you know what I mean? All this, that, and the third. You know, we have a job to do. A job needs to be completed, and it's going to be completed. You know what I mean? We shouldn't have to sit up here and worry about all this shit.
Well, it's like, I had a fucking soldier. So again, being a medic, you know, I know you guys know what all that we do, you know, kind of in the rear. But for those that don't, basically the medic's job is just checking on their guys, right? Making sure the first sergeants and commanders, they have their med pros done, everyone's happy, and then we don't really do much, right? But I remember the biggest thing that kind of stuck with me, that opened my eyes to this, was I call everybody buddy. I don't care if you're female, male, whatever, you're buddy to me. It's just kind of one of those things that medics, we have to associate with everybody, right? On the same level. We're there for everybody. And they came in to do MedPros one day, and I just, hey, bud, what's going on? And it was a private. And they were like, excuse me, I am a female. I'm like, okay.
And
first of all, rank just means nothing in this situation. It's like,
yeah, we just gave a fuck about customs and courtesies, huh?
Yeah, it's like,
how about you stand at parade rest?
Yeah, and it's like, are you a female? Like, what? Now I have to look at your fucking MedPros and be like, hey, it says here you're a male. Okay, I have to treat you like you're a male. You have male reproductive organs, right? So this whole I'm this, I don't give a fuck.
Right.
I don't care if it hurts your feelings.
Right. No, and it, you know, listen, man, at the end of the day, we all die, right? And 100 years from now, when an archaeologist is digging out bones, they're not going to say, oh, this was a transgender female or male or anything like that. They're going to look at the bones and say this was male or fucking female. And that's it. That's how it's going to be classified. It's not this is a human person. No, they're not going to say that because they want to know the distinction. They're going to want to know, well, how did they die? Or, you know, when did they live? You know, shit like that. And what it was like for them.
Yeah.
So, you know, the crazy thing is our taxpayer dollars went to this gender affirming care, right? Now we talk about veterans and suicide rates and, you know, in the military having PTSD and all this other crazy stuff, but we don't go in with this mental illness, right? We get out with it. We get out messed up. Like we just, oh my God, dude. It's an MMA fight.
MMA fight, dude. You twist that dick.
So, you know, when we talk about it, we had to go through MEPS. We had to make sure we were 100% physically and mentally stable before we did.
Had to do the duck walk.
Gotta show that butthole.
Now you have a general statistic, right? That the 2015 transgender survey did. And it's clear that it's nearly 9 times the national average that transgender people or people who suffer with what's it called?
Dysphoria?
Gender dysphoria or body dysmorphia or something like that.
Yeah, gender dysmorphia. I believe.
Yeah, 9 times the national average on suicide rates or suicide ideation.
As opposed to just like everybody or veterans?
As opposed to everybody else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that if that is the case, we can kind of declare this a mental handicap, and you know they're mentally unstable. They're crazy, is what it's saying.
That's a crazy high number, dude.
That is right. And then they're allowed in the military to use our taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
They're allowed in the military to use our taxpayer dollars to get the sex change operation. And you know what? If it was successful and they, you know, whatever, blah, 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 and then they went to war, they'd be twice as messed up.
Yep.
That's crazy to think about, man. But
I mean, when you look at like the National Library of Medicine, you know, there's a big study that came out in 2020. I mean, this is going back to 2020. They've been looking at this. It's a descriptive study of transgender active duty service members in the U.S. military. And I mean, just looking at the conclusion of this, you know, and it states in here, in light of current policy that precludes, with limited exceptions, which we know now that there are none, transgender individuals from serving in the U.S. military and their affirmed gender, the current study provides an initial socio-demographic profile that basically says they are at higher risk for depression. They are at higher risk for suicidal ideations, you know, and that's kind of scary because putting everything else aside, you look at this and it's like your military, you know, we have our bad apples, right?
Sure.
But your military, when you as a civilian look at it, and what we want the civilian populace to see is that we're squared away. We know what we're doing. We're generally okay. Does that make sense? We're not gonna go do anything stupid when we get out.
For the most part,
You know?
yeah. We want to make sure that the world as a whole sees us in a certain light. Which,
Yeah.
you know, I will argue that most of us do the right thing. It's kind of like the police argument, right? Like the whole nation wants police officers gone because, you know, there were a few rotten apples. You know, I'm not saying corruption doesn't exist, but I'm just saying like that, you know,
Right.
the same people in Chicago aren't the same people in Texas. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
Wholeheartedly.
fair, it'd be fair to say, like, hey, man, in the military, we got people from all walks of life. Of course, there's going to be some bad people in there, you know,
Well,
but that
what
doesn't mean that the military as a whole is bad.
Right. Well, what I'm curious about is, you know, since they approved this, I wonder, is there going to be, you know, like a certain level of extra screening done before you go to MEPS or at MEPS? Is there going to be different questions asked? Is there going to be different criteria? Like that's what I'm curious about. I'm curious to see what they're going to do as far as like the policy in each individual branch, to see like what they're going to do to be able to either A, catch this before it becomes a problem, or B, you know, just stop it like from even happening in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, those are very good questions. What I'm particularly concerned about is, are they going to handle this in its own manner, where it's like either get yourself right so you can continue serving, or get the hell out kind of deal, right? Are they going to treat it like they did with the people during COVID who didn't want to get the vaccine?
Yeah.
Are they going to get GOMARD? Are they going to get barred from any, you know, from everything, like any kind of benefits? Are they going to get a dishonorable discharge? Like, what's going to happen there? Because I mean, look at it this way, right? These, no matter how you see it, how you view it, these people still are technically veterans,
right?
They might not be right in the head, but they are veterans, right? So like, I hope that in doing so, these people don't get royally screwed over during the process, like, because they're already getting a pretty bad deal with the whole like, hey man, we're banning this, you know, so no, get out.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, man, on one hand, they shouldn't have been allowed in the first place, you know, just because as military members, we have to work on like a second's notice. We have to be able to react within milliseconds, if at all possible. And we don't have time to sit there and stop and say, what's your pronoun? You know, and then we get nervous as members. I got nervous every time I had to ask somebody because I couldn't remember sometimes because I wasn't focused on
right. Yeah. It's just not something you think about.
Yeah.
Well, and like I definitely don't think that, you know, that they need to be kicked out necessarily in a bad way. I mean, they are still people. They are still veterans at the end of the day. They should be extended the exact same, you know, resources that were extended to us, you know, so I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw this up on the screen real quick. So if you take a look at it, the U.S. Supreme Court on Tuesday allowed the Trump administration's transgender military ban to take effect. It was a court ruling. It was 6-3. Liberal justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson would have denied the application. There was no explanation included in the Supreme Court's decision. So when you really take a look at it, right, and when you just break it down, they knew the battlefield isn't a social experiment. It's life or death. At the end of the day, that's all it is, right? So with that said, I think we are going to move on to today's meat and potatoes. We're going to be getting into open borders, closed eyes, and how we let America get invaded. I mean, it's crazy to think that back in 2020, or I'd even argue since before then, you know, we were already being flooded with immigrants. And it's one of the principles that Trump ran on in the first place. Then you get Sleepy Joe into office, who honestly, you know, our buddy Dakota brings up a valid point. I feel sorry for the guy because he was just puppeted around the entire 4 years he was in office.
Yeah.
You know, but there was, I think the exact number is a little dicey, but it was around 14 million people. 14 million people came across our borders. And people don't want to sit there and say that we were invaded. They don't want to admit it. Okay, guys. So we just got word that Gunnar has to leave. So we're gonna bring him up on the screen real quick so he can say bye to the audience. See you later, guys.
Hey guys, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Anytime, brother. Anytime.
Anytime, man.
Hey, thanks for coming on, man. It's always a pleasure having you on. It's always a pleasure communicating with you and talking. But be safe, do what you got to do, and I look forward to having you on again, man.
Hey, whenever you need, I'll be here.
Yeah.
All right, brother. We'll see you.
So back in 2020, up to now, there's been about 14 million people that have invaded the United States. And to say it wasn't an invasion is dumb. I'm sorry, man. It's crazy that you don't think that that's an invasion, right? And people would argue, oh, we're a country made up of immigrants and this and that and the other. No, we're a country of settlers. We settled here, right? And then people bring up the argument of Native Americans. Now, nothing against the Native Americans here, but what they just think that they were peace-loving, earth-walking people, when in reality, these were warriors. When people started settling, the pioneers settled west, they were getting attacked. That's what was going on, dude. So we went to war with them. We didn't steal their land. We took the spoils of war. At the end of the day, that's what it was. I don't care who you are. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but at the end of the day, 14 million is an insane number. And then when they started getting detained through like the catch and release stuff, they'd be like, hey, you're an illegal immigrant. You're not supposed to be here. They noted that and still let them go, right? But then they would give them tools to use. Oh, I'm seeking asylum, right? They would give them like legal advice and say, hey, just say you're seeking asylum. And then you can stay here. That's fine. It's just outrageous, man.
Yeah, I mean, first off, like you said, what did you say? 14 million? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
14 million is a crazy fucking number. Crazy number. Like, just to begin with. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, to say that it wasn't an invasion is absolutely crazy. It might not be a formal military invasion, like what I think a lot of people would probably think about when you hear the word invasion, you know, like the invasion of this country or the invasion of that country. You think, okay, well, the military must have came in and it's a war, right? But when you talk about like the illegal immigration crisis and the border crisis, you don't necessarily think of it as like a formal invasion. But then you hear the numbers 14 million. That is a crazy number.
Yeah, 100%. And the worst part is they had to enact the Alien Enemies Act, you know, and mostly because we have what is classified now as terrorist organizations. These are drug cartels. These are criminals, right? Who used to be arms of government back in El Salvador and Venezuela, right? These were classified as paramilitary people who protect drug lords, who distribute drugs, who promote human trafficking.
Yeah, commit heinous crimes.
Yeah, very heinous crimes. You know, in order to get into MS-13, they target children, essentially, right? They target like 15-year-olds. And in order to get in, the initiation process is you got to go murder somebody. That's wild to think about, right? And that's just to get into MS-13. Now
that's just to get in.
let's get into this Abrego Garcia thing. Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You know, people are like, oh, he's a Maryland man. Fuck no, dude. He's not. He's not a Maryland man. He's an illegal immigrant from El Salvador. He's a criminal who has known ties to MS-13. Right? He abuses his wife and kids. He was caught up in human trafficking.
Yeah. With other members of MS-13. With
other not only with other members of MS-13, but with like 9 other illegal immigrants. Hold on, let me pull up the article because I can show you right now.
Yeah, I'm reading right here. He has an extensive criminal history for multiple assault, concealing dangerous weapons, burglary, other criminal offenses. You know, just like you said, he beat the brakes off of his wife. Yeah. So it's like, you know, we're talking about like, oh, well, it's a Maryland man. Well, it's also a piece of shit, you know, that we're really talking about here. We're talking about a piece of shit. That's what we're arguing about. We're arguing about, oh, well, he didn't really go to like where he should have went. Who fucking cares? Who cares? Get him out of here. Dude's trafficking fucking other human beings. He's got gun charges, burglary charges. He's stealing shit, breaking up into people's shit, beating his wife and kids. Who cares? Who cares? He could have went to fucking Alcatraz. Honestly, like he could have went anywhere. He could have went to Mexico. He could have went to Cambodia. I don't give a shit where he goes. Get him out of here. I don't want that shit here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, people would argue that, you know, oh, well, there wasn't due process. What? No, he was already in courts twice, at least beforehand, telling him he's an illegal immigrant. He doesn't belong here. Right. That's a known fact. Yeah. Right. He in 2019, he gang units in what was it, Prince George?
Found guilty of gang participation in the circuit court for Prince George's County in December of 2018.
2018. There you go. He had gang units watching him. Now, I don't know if you know how that works. They have to do an investigation. That's part of due process, right? Yep. So when you say that he wasn't officially gone through, he hasn't officially gone through our courts and been, you know, tried by a judge and jury and everything, you're a liar. You're a liar. I'm going to say that outright. You just lied because you don't know the facts, right? So now he's in El Salvador, and, you know, I'm sure his country will prosecute him to the fullest. You know, it's up to his country to do that, not us, right? And a lot of these people who are getting gone, the reason why the Trump administration gets to do that is because of the Alien Enemies Act, right? It means they're enemies. They don't have to go through our trial process. So for the first 100 days while he's doing this mass deportation, who's targeting criminals, by the way, not just any random Joe Schmo, he's targeting criminals. He's able to say, hey, get the fuck gone. Take a hike, kid. You know? And you got people that are siding with this guy because why? Why are they siding with this guy? Hey, man, he's a criminal, known piece of shit, and you don't want him gone? What is your problem?
And in the arrest report, he told them that him and the people that they were with, it says the subjects freely admitted, subjects being him and the people that he were with. The other, I think, 3 people he was arrested with in Maryland, says, and I'm reading from the police report here, it says the subjects freely admitted being citizens and national of El Salvador by birth, and that they were present in the United States illegally. The subjects were not in possession of any immigration documents that would allow them to be in or remain in the United States legally. Yeah. So it's like they admitted that they weren't supposed to be here. You know what I mean? They asked him, hey, man, show some ID. And they're like, you know, the way my bank account's set up, you know, these aren't my pants, you know, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, did you hear about the 2022 traffic stop in Tennessee?
Of him?
Yeah. So,
let me look that up real quick.
So it was confirmed Tuesday that Jose Ramon Hernandez Reyes, an already convicted human smuggler and repeat border violator, has admitted under immunity to hiring El Salvadorian national Kilmar Abrego Garcia for string of human trafficking operations across the United States. The revelation follows a controversial 2022 Tennessee Highway Patrol traffic stop where Abrego Garcia was caught transporting 9 illegal immigrants through Tennessee without a license. Tennessee Highway Patrol pulled over Abrego Garcia on November 30th, 2022 for speeding and swerving. When troopers approached his vehicle, they were shocked to discover 8 male passengers packed inside. Now, I'm not just spewing venom or nonsense here. I'm going to show you the article. Here we go. Ready for it? Boom. Everything I read right there. You can go to thegatewaypundit.com and view this artical. Like, it's no big secret, you know. He had a whole nother human smuggler who's convicted. Telling him, oh yeah, he was like, oh yeah, he's using my car to do it.
Pulled over Garcia. Dang.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is, right, is that dude's a criminal. He's a known criminal, and not like, oh, ha ha ha, like, you know what I mean? He committed like tax fraud. No, like beats the shit out of his wife, smuggles fucking other human beings, has gun charges, burglary charges, all these types of things. And people are like, you know, from what I've heard, people are upset that he was, you know, in the process of being deported. And then I've heard other people say that, well, they're upset that he didn't go to the right place that he was supposed to go to. Either way, right, in the way that I see it, who fucking cares? Who cares? Get him out of here. I'm dead ass. I'm dead serious. Who cares? You know what I mean?
Well, so people argue, like, for instance, somebody was arguing with Charlie Kirk, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you already know that's pretty much a bad idea.
Yeah.
Right? But, you know, he's like, oh yeah, this Kilmar Abrego Garcia guy should have gone through due process. You know, he should have gone through our court system.
But he did a bunch of times.
Yeah, he did a bunch of times. That's what I'm saying. That's what you know.
Yeah.
And this isn't me just taking Charlie Kirk's word for it. I actually went out, I did my research, and I saw it. Right?
Yeah.
You did your research. You saw it. You know.
Yeah. It's not like
we're watching mainstream media and having everybody's opinion reflect on us, and so now we're just regurgitating the same exact thing, right?
Yeah. It's not like he went through due process once. It's not like this was like a one-time thing. He went through due process multiple times, was found guilty multiple times on multiple charges, and still continued with the exact same behavior. And then it admitted to being here illegally. What did y'all think was gonna happen? Y'all thought shit was cool, huh? They were just gonna hang out here. No, bro, y'all got to go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, and wasn't there a document that basically stated from the FBI that an investigation was conducted that concluded he was in fact an MS-13 member? So not only do you have the criminal convictions in 2018 or you know the gang unit that's investigating him back in 2019 or anything like that, now you have actual, you know, from the FBI, they did their investigation and concluded this is a known criminal who has ties to MS-13. Like, what? You can't believe it now that Kash Patel's the head of the FBI? You don't believe it because what, Bongino is his deputy director? Like, get out of here. You know, so many people on the left, you know, demonize anyone who is on the right, and they don't care if they're right or wrong. The left just wants to say you're wrong because you don't align with their political ideology. Just like the January 6th riots, right? Where was their due process? And they're American citizens. You got, let me see if I can find it. I can pull it up. Here we go. So, for instance, right, you had the leader of the Proud Boys, who wasn't a white supremacist group. They were a drinking club, right? That's what they did. They were a drinking fraternity. They like to get together, taste a bunch of whiskeys, hang out, maybe play some pool. They were non-aggressive, whatever. But because a small group of them decided to be at the Capitol on January 6th, somebody who wasn't even there was arrested in Florida for quote unquote organizing an insurrection. His name was Enrique Tarrio. He's Puerto Rican. And they're like, oh, he's a white supremacist because he's affiliated with the Proud Boys now. And he had one of the most harsh sentences. He was sentenced to 22 years in prison, right? And he did an interview on Louder with Crowder, where as soon as he got pardoned, he got out. He did this interview with them. He was like, yeah, man, I wasn't even there. I didn't organize anything. You can go through, they went through my computers. They didn't find anything that was saying I was trying to incite a resurrection. He's like, honestly, if that was something I wanted to do, I'd have been there myself. He's like, but I didn't want to do it. I wasn't even there. So he's doing this interview. He says he walks into the courtroom and he's like, why am I even here, man? The lawyer's like, don't worry. We're going to get you 7 years and then you're going to be done with this. And he's like, 7 years for what? Like, what the fuck did I do to get into jail for 7 years? He's like, don't worry. We'll figure this out. Right. Goes back, tries to work out a deal with the lawyers and try to, figure out what they can do to reduce the jail sentence time. And then they come back at him with, well, now it's 11 years. What the fuck? And then they go back. Oh, well, now it's 18 years. And then they go back. Oh, now it's 22 years. Until finally he was just like, whoa, stop. Right? Like, I'm done with it. And then luckily, Trump came in and pardoned him. Now, hey, man, if you are beating cops, if you are killing people, if you are doing the wrong thing, I don't think that's right. I think that shit's stupid. You shouldn't do it. But that's not what happened. You know what happened instead? The Capitol Police let a bunch of people into the building. They're all just walking around. And then the media paints this vivid picture of, oh, look at these insurrectionists and look at all the damage they've done. And these are criminals and they deserve to go to jail. And that's legacy media for you.
Wasn't there something else too about the wasn't there like evidence that like building materials were planted in certain areas like so that they could like kind of like fuck up like part of the building and like destroy part of the building? Or am I thinking of something different? Am I tripping?
Yeah, you're kind of tripping, man.
I'm tripping?
Yeah, so
what am I thinking about?
You're thinking of the 2020 riots, man. Antifa and BLM. Yeah.
Where they were like
in places like Detroit, Chicago, I think it was maybe not Dallas, but it was like big cities that they were targeting. I think
like didn't like Portland have like a big riot too, right?
It was possible, yeah. But like where they're just going through and tearing stuff up, the crazy thing is prior to it happening, they were transporting building materials like bricks and lumber and stuff like that into these cities on pallets and just kind of dropping them on the sides of the street with no clear direction as to where those building materials are going to be utilized. Right?
So it's not like they were like going on a truck like to a construction site.
No, they were just getting dropped off on the side of the street, man. And next thing you know, you have these massive riots, these massive violent riots. And that's what the building material was used for. Now, that shit didn't happen in DC. No. People were essentially welcomed into the Capitol building by Capitol Police and later charged with insurrection, or like whatever they were charged, like violent insurrection acts or treasonous acts against the United States or whatever it may have been, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm reading here, like going back to the Proud Boys thing, excuse me. May of 2023, 4 leaders were convicted of seditious conspiracy and other felony charges. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, but then you go through the trial, the hearings of all of them. Nah, man, they all walked in. It was real hush hush. They got convicted of whatever they got convicted of, but there was really no investigation. There was not a chance. It was all a biased jury and judge. and these people got decades worth slapped on for sentences. You know, it's crazy. You just ruined somebody's life for something that didn't even take place. And again, let me reiterate, Enrique Tarrio wasn't even there, dog. He wasn't even at the Capitol. He was at his home in Florida when he got arrested. And it was like conspiracy to commit treason or whatever he got. Like it was some conspiracy charge, right? And I just think it's ridiculous to think of how the last 8 years have been with weaponizing the law.
Yeah, because I'm reading here, it says Tarrio was not physically present, having been arrested days earlier. He was found to have coordinated the group's actions remotely, but they didn't find any evidence of him doing that, right?
No, sir.
So they just okay, right. So they just took this group of people and just said, fuck them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they were Trump supporters. Bottom line. That like they may as well have just gone throughout the entire country and said, "Are you a Republican? Go to jail." Right?
Right.
Because that's really all they did. That's crazy to think about. Are you not a Democrat? Are you not a liberal? Go to jail.
Well, and like, was the trial like televised? Was it, you know what I mean?
No.
Like, was there like articles put out about it? Because I'm not, I mean, mind you, I'm not typing my ass off here or anything, but you know, so it wasn't televised. There don't really seem to be a lot of articles like around the subject. I mean, there's like articles about like what happened on January 6th and like in coordination like with the members of the Proud Boys, but there doesn't seem to really be anything talking about any evidence, any text messages, any emails, any.
Yeah, no, and like I said, dude, the trial was real hush hush, man. It wasn't televised. It wasn't like all up in the newspapers all the time. You know, like we didn't start hearing about what was going on until after the trial had taken place. Almost like
because they knew people were gonna throw a shit fit.
Well, yeah, and it's almost like the trial for Trump in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't talk about it. They couldn't tell him what he did criminally. Like they just said, "Oh, you're being charged with 34 felony counts." He's like, "Okay, what was my crime?" And they just start like spewing a bunch of shit, dancing around the subject, not actually telling him a crime. That's why these felonies were reduced to misdemeanors.
Yeah, I heard all crazy shit about like Trump's trial, like everything from fucking he sold national secrets to he's holding fucking a bunch of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago to this and to that. But like, yeah, what was he actually being charged with?
Nothing. So here was the deal with the trial thing for Trump. It was such a huge thing. It was televised. Everybody was tuning in. Everybody was watching it.
Yeah.
What they couldn't do was produce a crime, right? People hear 34 felonies and they're like, "Oh, this is a felon. How could he become the president of the United States?"
President of the United States, right?
Right. And it's to put him in a bad light. It's to say, you know, well, look at this guy. How can you trust him? He was convicted of X, Y, and Z. You know, why would you ever want that guy to be your president? It's crazy to think about. But they're still trying to do it. You know, we talked about it a little bit last time we touched on it. I think it was the tariffs. So last week's episode, we talked about the tariffs, right? And we talked about how companies are suing him because they think they feel, quote unquote, that he had to go through Congress to get this stuff approved when he didn't, because you know, it became a threat to our national security when our economy started failing, right? So under the act that he acted on, I can't remember the name of the act for the life of me right now. I'd have to look it back up. But what they're doing is they're suing him to put him back inside the legal system, to be like, "Hey, man, look at your president. He's constantly in and out of court. You know, his party is a bunch of criminals." That's all they can say. That's all they can think about, right? But they can't produce any evidence for an actual crime. And it's like I was talking to Dakota a little bit the other day, and I was like, this man is a very smart man, right? Donald Trump is a very smart man. He is a businessman, right? He's made billions of dollars. And you're going to tell me that he went through 8 years in the legal system and didn't learn a damn thing about how the law works? And so now he's in the presidency again, and you're going to call him a retard? You know, I might have to bleep that word out just for YouTube. But you're going to call him stupid? You're going to call him an idiot? You know?
Right.
And it's like
he didn't become a billionaire because he was dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, just like Elon Musk. He didn't become an idiot because he was he didn't become a billionaire because he's an idiot.
Right.
He became a billionaire because he's very smart. But you know, just it's crazy work, man. Crazy work.
You know
Luckily,
what's interesting? Sorry, go
what's
on.
that? I was going to say, luckily, people have caught on to what's going on, especially Gen Z, right? The younger generations, because they have a movement that's more pro-Trump, pro-MAGA in general. And then the people who are crying about it are the boomers. You know?
Yeah.
They're 65 years old and they're watching the legacy news on their old TVs, and they're like, I just don't like Trump. When in fact, we're a little bit more invested, because now we got to be like, hey man, I want affordable housing. I want a job. I want a good paying job, right?
Yeah.
I want to be able to afford groceries. I want to be able to afford gas. I want to buy a car. I want to be able to travel, you know? And how do you do that? You boost the economy. You make the economy great. Once the economy is great, people are getting jobs, people are buying houses, people are buying cars, people are traveling, they're going on vacation, they're doing what they got to do, they're providing groceries for their family, and they don't have a care in the world because now they're doing good for themselves. But what were you going to say? It's interesting that what?
I was just like reading something about like related to the January 6th, you know, they're calling it a Capitol attack. About him like interfering with like the election, and it says the charges relate to Trump's alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election results, culminating in the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot. As of now, the trial has been postponed pending a Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity. What I find weird is that they're accusing Trump of interfering with the 2020 election results, but also at the same time, weren't multiple states found that at random times throughout the night, Biden's numbers just incredibly skyrocketed just out of nowhere at like odd times, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning? Am I wrong? Like, am I remembering that wrong? Am I schizophrenic? What's going on?
You're not. Yes, that happened. Now there's talks about, there have been talks with, like, you know, Pam Bondi, the attorney general now, the U.S. attorney general, and like Kash Patel, director of the FBI, and President Trump, in trying to find what out and trying to find out what exactly happened in the 2020 election period, right? And a lot of it comes down to Pennsylvania, which coincidentally enough is Joe Biden's home state.
Is it?
Yeah. So
isn't it ironic?
Yeah. So there were a bunch of rumors going around that, you know, old dead people were voting, and that ballots were coming in marked with like the identities of the people who were voting on these mail-in ballots were dead,
like deceased,
right? So like, yeah, how could a dead person vote, kind of thing, right?
Right.
And again, that's all hearsay.
They must have had a psychic pen pal.
Yeah, right. So here's the other side of that, is if you look at the 2024 interview with Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, Elon goes to talk about this flood of international citizens, right? I'm just going to say international citizens because they come from everywhere from Mexico to Canada to
right. Everywhere but
Middle East, you know, everywhere but here, right? And now they become illegal immigrants because they're in the United States, and they're in what's called like sanctuary cities or asylum cities, right?
Right.
And these numbers completely throw off the economic balance of wherever they're at now, right? But Musk was talking about the Democrats' target move was to try and naturalize these citizens as quickly as possible so that they can win the votes.
So that they can vote, right.
And if they won the vote, there would never be another Republican in office ever again. So it would go from a two-party system to a one-party system real quick, right? With that said,
move.
Oh, very horrible. But with that said, right? It's crazy to think about what that would have looked like now if we kept all 14 million of those people. And now now you have people who are self-deporting. Did you know that? You got thousands of people self-deporting, and now they're offering incentives for people to self-deport. Like if you self-deport, here's $1,000. Now, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a whole lot of money, but it's better than going to jail, right?
Right. And is it in USD? Because $1,000 USD might not be terribly a whole lot of money to Americans, but if you're from a different country that like the transfer ratio is like super, super low, $1,000 might be, let's just say 14,000 rubles or something, for example.
Right.
So is it in USD? Like the self?
I'd have to look again. I think so. I think. I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't be like, oh, we're going to give you $1,000 in whatever your country's currency is, because they want to make it, they want to make it the offer enticing. And,
right.
And I mean, obviously in America, $1,000 ain't going to go far. But if you're from South America, they're going to be like, oh, the $1,000 could get me pretty far.
Right. Yeah.
Like, for instance, let's say I got, I don't know, 70% disability from the VA, right? That's not a whole lot. That's what, like $1,800, something like that.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. That's roughly
16,
around
18,
there.
17, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So let's just call it 17, right?
Right.
I could move to the Philippines and live off of that comfortably.
Right.
Like that's, and that's just like, that's less than $2,000. That's a little bit over $1,000. But here, $1,700 a month, that ain't it, dog.
Yeah, you might be able to sleep on the floor, but you're going to starve to death.
Oh, for sure.
It's not going to be great.
Yeah, but getting into it, there's a two-tiered justice system, and for whatever reason, if you love this country, you're the target. And I don't know why that is, right? So we have 14 million illegal immigrants coming over here. But then if you're saying I'm a nationalist, when did that become such a bad word? When did that become muddled? Right? When did it become profane to say I put America first? Now I'm a target because I am for America. I've been a target for the last 10 years. For the last 15 years, I'd argue. You got people stomping on the American flag, lighting it on fire. You got illegal immigrants waving their flag down our streets. And it's like, bro, you love your country so much, get the fuck out.
Right.
Get the fuck out of here. Go home. You came here to prosper.
To better yourselves, to better your families, not sit here and hoot and holler and do all this stupid shit.
Oh, yeah. Well, and a lot of people, what they don't realize is diversity is inherently divisive, right? People would argue diversity is our strength when that is not the case. Because when you get a melting pot of hundreds of thousands of different cultures and personalities and anything else, right? People start judging everybody. They're like, oh, you should do it this way. Oh, you should do it that way. Or, mind your fucking business, Susan, or, whatever it is. Right. And so now we start getting divided, and I'm tired of the division. I want unity. We need to unite, one nation. Right. But no, people, they want to argue about stupid stuff that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people just like the fight too. Like it gives them something to do. You know what I mean? Because like if your life sucks and like you're just kind of going through the motions and you're just kind of waiting to die, like I feel like a lot of people are like that in that aspect where they're like, I fucking hate my job, I hate where I live, I don't make enough money to change it, I don't make enough money to go to school to be able to pay for this without being in crippling debt that's gonna make me have a heart attack in 15 years. So I feel like a lot of people are like, fuck it, I'll argue with people on the internet, which adds and adds and adds and adds. And yeah, I'll argue about politics and I'll argue about this and that. So I just think a lot of people like to fight. It gives them something to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does give them something to do. I personally don't appreciate the same sentiment, like
Yeah.
I'll talk with you and I'll argue my facts or points or whatever, and you can argue whatever. And it is what it is. And it's going to be, at the end of the day, I'm still going to think one way and you're probably going to think another,
Sure.
but I'm not going to sit there and fight, hell, we had going back to Charlie Kirk, there was a 70-year-old man that wanted to challenge him to a gentleman's fist fight.
Yeah. Fist fight. Yeah.
Which further proves that the left can't do it with words. They have to do it with violence. That's crazy to think about. They want to fight, You got people tearing up Tesla dealerships. You got people vandalizing other people's properties who voted for Trump and everything. Hey, man, check this out. You remember back in like 2015, if you bought a MAGA hat, people were getting beat up on the streets and everything, and people were getting ripped to shreds. And like, you couldn't go out in public wearing any Trump apparel at all. You couldn't like even say you voted for Trump because you were already like scared of the fact that somebody was going to beat your brains in,
Yeah.
That's crazy to think about, because now, man, they're selling out of their apparel. They can't get enough. No, I'm serious, man. I'm serious. They're selling out, dude.
He said, we need more t-shirts, baby.
Yeah. But
it's funny.
Anyways, another thing I wanted to talk about, man, is so you remember our episode on the Ukraine and how they were trying to strike a deal and everything? Well, they finally did it. Right? Struck a deal with the Ukraine for the mineral rights. Marco Rubio went in there and he's like, hey, man, I'm a foreign policy hawk. Went in there, did it. Right? So now the only thing we got to worry about is how's Putin going to respond? And the other reality is that people don't talk about. You can't go back to pre-2022 Ukraine. Russia's taken portions of the Ukraine that they're not going to give up. So the deal's probably going to be, hey, Putin, keep those, little territories. We're going to have the mineral rights here in the Ukraine. Shut the fuck up. Everybody happy?
Yeah. Keep the scraps that you got. Don't fuck with what we got going on. Everything will be all right.
Oh, for sure. Definitely, man.
You think he'll do it? You think he'll agree to those terms? Or do you think he'll have a shit fit?
I think if he was going to have a shit fit, he would have done something by now.
Yeah, true.
Because, I mean, this has been a few days. This has been a few days now.
I was going to say it was signed April 30th.
Yeah.
So
it's already been a week now.
Yeah.
I think if he had an issue like that was big enough with it, he would have done something by now. Again, still an EU problem.
For sure.
But now that we're invested, I think that the benefit of this these peace talks is now that we're in it, we're getting something out of it.
Right. Yeah.
We're not just playing Big Brother. We're actually getting something out of it.
Yeah.
Which
we're at least getting something for our troubles.
Yeah. I mean, these minerals can go into enhancing technology, producing more for us, producing more for the world, whatever it may be,
Yeah. Get a little kickback from the billions and billions of dollars we've sent to fund somebody else's war.
Yeah. Well, did you know that they started selling Trump 2028 hats?
Did they really?
Yeah. So everybody, as soon as that hit the website, everybody started freaking out. Right? They started freaking out. They're like, "Oh my God, he wants to run for a third term," and he's joked about it.
Yeah.
But according to the U.S. Constitution, he can't run again.
Yeah,
right?
I saw an interview, like a clip of like an interview where they were asking him like, "Oh, do you have plans to run again?" And he was like, "Not really, no. Why would I do that?" And then like goes into like, "Well, I can't. First off, like, you know, everybody's so up in arms about like the rules of this and the rules of that, and then when he's like, "Yeah, I can't because it's the rules," everybody's like, "Oh, I didn't see that." You know what I mean? I didn't hear that. Like,
yeah. Well, it's funny because, Trump, we always knock him for saying some wild shit.
He does say crazy shit.
He says some crazy shit, man.
I mean, you got to respect it.
Well, here's the other side. He's a troll.
Oh,
Dude,
yeah, big time.
Dude's a troll. You tell him like, you can't blah blah blah. He's like, I'm gonna come.
He don't give a fuck. Bro, did you see the I don't know if it was like a press conference or like what they were talking about, but like the Prime Minister of Canada came down and then they were like asking him about like what was it? About Canada becoming the 51st state of the United States of America. The Prime Minister goes on, he goes, "Well, we're not, going to do that and everything." And then the camera pans to Trump real quick and he goes like this. He goes, and it's like him being like, "We'll see." You know what I mean?
No, dude, no, that was they're sitting down and he's like, "It's not for sale." Just like this isn't, or just like this White House isn't for sale. We're not for sale. And Trump goes, I don't know. Maybe never say never.
He makes a face to be like, "Oh, we'll see." So funny.
He says, "Never say never." And again, like,
he doesn't give a fuck.
That's just him trolling. He doesn't give a shit. Like, whatever. And I'd even argue, like, hey, man, we don't need him. My point is, with Trump doing the Trump 2028 thing, we already know he's not going to run again. Yeah. We already know he constitutionally can't run again, right? So where does that leave MAGA, right? Where does that leave MAGA? Is who's going to take over? Who's going to be the new spokesperson? Because I'd be good goddamned if AOC puts her bid in for the presidency. She's already an 80-20 candidate. Nobody's going to vote for her.
Yeah. She's
been caught multiple times doing some bullshit propaganda pieces. Like, look at the border crisis the first time. Look at the border crisis the first time. She stood in an empty parking lot with the fucking fence in front of her, and she's like, did you get a good picture? Cool. And then moves on.
Got the shot.
Yeah.
Let's get back in our fucking Mercedes Benz.
Yeah, no
champagne
kidding, man.
And jerk off in the back seat.
But I guess, listen, man, Trump is very early into his second presidency. He's got a long way to go before, he starts endorsing anybody for the presidential bid.
Yeah.
Right. But he's already said, hey, man, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio are doing great things. I mean, look at J.D. Vance. He's a populist, anti-war, and has strong border policies. That's something I'd vote for. Marco Rubio, pro-mineral deal, foreign policy hawk, transitioning towards MAGA adjacent. I mean, they're very, very strong leaders already with very strong policies. And they're moving full steam ahead, man. They're getting shit done, which we haven't seen in the last 8 years because of all the legal bullshit and legal hurdles that Trump had to climb through.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and like with the previous administration too, all we've done was hear shit. We've just heard about this and heard about that, heard about this. Shit's actually getting done now. Oh, yeah. And also too, like he said straight out the gate, he was like, "I'm coming in, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this." And people were like, "Oh my God, no, oh my God, it's such a travesty." And then he got in office and did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, dude, it's not bullshitting. Like he's,
I'll fucking do it again.
Yeah, I'll fucking do it again. Yeah, right. He's doing it. So it's like, I'd rather, and I might not agree with everything that he does, right? Or everything that his administration does, but at least something's being done. You know what I mean? We don't have an old white dude falling down the fucking steps, Air Force One, you know what I mean? 3 different times going, "Oh shit, piss, fucking," you know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, man.
Like, at least something's being done. Like, fuck.
Let's go, Brandon.
Dude. fuck's sake, man.
My point inevitably is MAGA doesn't end with Trump, right? At the end of the day, though, better not turn into an establishment brand. Like that's like the main thing, right? Like we're always saying, fuck the establishment, right? Well,
yeah,
MAGA is a movement to better our country and put America first. And if it becomes one of those things where it starts getting out of hand and it's just like, you know, it's oppressing people, then I'll get on board with the, oh, maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, you're right because you have an opinion when I have a fact sheet pulled up.
Right.
So
another thing that I'm curious to see, kind of like on the same topic, is now that we've gone through the bullshit that happened during the 2020 elections, where a lot of people say that numbers were faked, ballots, you know, and we talked about the whole dead people voting, and you know what they say, like people with social security numbers that had passed away, like over that would have aged them to be like 240 some odd years old, were voting and stuff like that.
Yeah. So there was somebody who was I'm not sure about the votes. Here's the thing with that, like getting back into illegal immigration and whatnot, is when Elon Musk was talking about trying to get the 14 million citizen or the 14 million illegal immigrants their citizenship so that, you know, Democrats win and everything. I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere people were given social security numbers or social security cards that like were illegally here, that weren't supposed to be here, that weren't supposed to get a card. And it wasn't like, here's your own personal card with your own name and number. This was like, here's the dead guy's, you know, social security card. Go do whatever you got to do. Because then when Doge uncovered the findings for people receiving their social security income, there was people who were well past dead receiving it, right? You're talking like
right,
like I think it was 29 million people over the age of 100 that were still receiving social security income, right? So it would almost be like in the next 6 months, I wouldn't be surprised if further investigation uncovered that these illegal immigrants were voting for Joe Biden back in 2020 using dead people's social security cards.
Right. Well, and I guess, you know, what I'm curious about is, because of all the shit that happened in 2020, you know, because of the shit that's going on with Trump and his administration now, and how people on the left are upset at Trump, people on the right are upset with you know, the previous administration and possibly the future one. What I'm curious to see is the next set of presidential elections, like not necessarily just the next one, but the next few. I'd say like the next 5, right? Is it going to be a case of, you know, now we have a Republican in office, right? It's a right-sided administration. What I'm curious to see is the next administration that we get, are they going to be left-sided just because this one was right-sided? And then after that, is it going to be right-sided just because it was left-sided and everybody fucking hates each other so much? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's almost like
like, are we going to be putting people in office just because of like the hate that was received? You know what I mean?
God, I hope not.
Yeah, me too.
But I mean, historically, you look at it and it's almost like, you know, people who get in office, people who come out of office, stuff like that. It's like always, this one's Republican, this one's Democrat, this one's Republican. Oh, this one got, you know, it's a Democrat. Now they got voted in a second time. Oh, now it's a Republican. You know, it's kind of a crazy thing. I would love for there to be back-to-back common sense elections.
Sure.
Right. So, and what I mean by that is, I don't care if it's another Republican or another Democrat or even an independent party. What I care about is, do they have our best intentions?
Right. And are they going to do stuff that makes sense?
Yeah. I don't want this crazy woke ideology back in politics. You know, it's crazy to think about that. You know, you have people in Hollywood that are changing the script on everything just to adhere to some woke narrative. It's crazy to hear that, you have people who are like, oh, well, so here's one of the biggest things I have an issue with: racism. Let's take a look at that. Right. We touched on it a little bit privately.
Yeah, we did.
And we released a small episode about it, like a little 5-minute, 10-minute clip or whatever it was. But what I can't stand is over the last 20 years, you have demonized white folk. That's it. You've just demonized them. People are talking crazy, especially black people or people of color are talking crazy about white people and getting away with all sorts of racist things. But yet we say one thing that's questionably out of line, and
we're a racist, we're a bigot.
You're a racist, you're a white supremacist, you're a bigot, you fucking whatever they call us, and it's crazy to think about.
You're just standing in line at Taco Bell.
Yeah. It's like, bro, I just said I wanted a burrito.
Yeah.
But check it out, man. We talked about illegal immigration and how it is, in fact, a crisis, right? It needs to get solved. Something needs to get done, and President Trump is the only one willing to do it.
14 million is crazy.
His administration are the only ones willing to do it, right? January 6th was exploited for political control. That's another thing that is crazy to think about. At the end of the day, everything that Trump's doing is legal, decisive, and effective, right? You can't tell me it's not. Bring me evidence that the administration's breaking the law, and I'll stand behind you for an impeachment trial. Bottom line, I don't see the evidence. The crazy thing to think about is MAGA over the past 10 years hasn't just been, a brand. It's an entire movement. And it's a living, breathing organism now with as many people as are involved.
Yeah. It's got its own feet to stand up on now.
Yeah, man. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend. You can go follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We got a Rumble. We're still working on that one. We've ran into a few issues. Hey, we're even thinking about going live. If you'd love to see a live show, let us know. We'll schedule it in. But you got to comment down below. Let us know.
You got to talk to us.
Yeah, man.
Don't just like the shit and leave.
Yeah, don't just like it and leave. Check it out, man. We got a Patreon. You can become a member for free. When you do, you gain access to our Discord. We're trying to build our community. We're trying to grow. We're trying to get people involved. If you guys would love to support that movement, you can go to patreon.com/the Tills4Thrills Podcast, and you can go and get early access to behind the scenes footage, early access to the episodes. You can get early access to bonus content that we put out, and you can just communicate with us behind the scenes. You guys can talk to us. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can email us at the Tills4Thrills Podcast at gmail.com. You want to be a guest, you want to voice your concerns about the show, you want to suggest critiques in any way, shape, or form, you can do it right here. With that said, Nick, I think we can start wrapping up.
Yeah, man. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this week's episode. We're going to be trying to push out as much content as we can to you guys. We love being able to do this for you and push out what we feel is valuable information for you guys. Love all the support that you guys show us. Like Julian had said, like, comment, share, subscribe. About the live thing, let us know if you guys want to have us go live, so we can interact directly with one another. You guys can ask us questions. We can tell you how we feel on certain things, and maybe we might be able to get one or two of you on the show and see what the deal is with that. Other than that, if you guys are a veteran in need and you need to talk to somebody, and the VA isn't necessarily scheduling you a good appointment and it's a couple months out, or whatever the case might be, you're having tough time dealing with things, go ahead, call the Veterans Crisis Line, dial 988, press 1. Other than that, guys, we'll catch you in the next episode, and let's keep it moving. Bye-bye.